Welcome back to another episode of Careers and Coffee. I'm Kaylee and we have the lovely Josie doing the behind the scenes work today. So I am very excited for today's guest. We have Keely Bremner on the show who shall be speaking to us about the music industry, her experience of an artist, music PR, and how her music is also inspired by her passion of raising awareness about the climate crisis. So let's welcome Keely. Hello, lovely.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Amazing. So I'm going to just dive straight in and hand over to you to sort of like kick off. So yeah, to kick off the show, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure thing. So my name is Keely Bremner. I'm a singer, songwriter and artist, and I perform under the name of Forest. I'm also a freelance senior music PR, and I currently work under an umbrella company called LATCH, and I also organise independent eco music festivals.
Yes, and they are amazing as well. I have been to them and they are incredible and so much fun. So obviously there was a variety of roles there that you kind of who you are and what you do. So I know not every day is going to look the same, but if we're thinking about your role within music PR, what does your average day look like and what's involved with this role?
Cool. So what I love about it is that it changes so frequently. So some days I might be in a coffee shop responding to emails and making new connections with different music journalists and writers. The main part of my job is creating and establishing relationships and then developing those. So basically friendships, making friends with all these people. So I get to chat to them and find out about their lives and all sorts of things. So it could be about emails and sharing a new release I'm working on. It could be about research, researching how to share this new release. For example, if an artist is not only a musician, but they're also interested in cooking or fitness or the environment, then I'd have a little look online and see where best I can place their music, what opportunities I can find for them and that kind of stuff. It also can be about meeting up with clients, whether that's video calls or meeting up with them in a coffee shop or in a bar, things like that. And also going to gigs and seeing live music and meeting journalists and other PRs, in person and making those connections. So it is a little bit different kind of every day, but that's kind of the different kind of role to role things that I find myself doing.
It sounds so much fun as well. And you mentioned about maybe in like sending emails, you like sitting in a coffee shop sending emails. So you are remote based, so you work from home. But can you tell us about the like different places that you may work? Because I know obviously since the pandemic with COVID, the kind of the workplace landscape is changing and more people find themselves being remote. So I'd be really interested just kind of maybe get your take on working from home.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my kind of the biggest aspirations when I was looking for a job and looking of how I can kind of bring these things together. So I've passion for music, love music, but I also love traveling, and I wanted to kind of bring those two together and wasn't sure exactly how that would kind of look. And I wanted to, be on my own schedule and plan the day and just not really kind of be tied down to the general 9 to 5 speaking kind of work day. So basically I can work from home, or I tend to work from we've got a local coffee shop down the road which I work from there. I lived in Portugal for a month and I worked out of Portugal, which was amazing, and I hope to do a bit more about that around that. And I've also kind of, when I've traveled to Scotland, I've had to work and just got my laptop out and been there, in Ireland and Wales, kind of wherever I am. And if I need to work, as long as I've got my laptop, I'm fine to do that. I've also kind of joined a new membership club, which is for creatives in London. And it means that I can go to any of their venues as well and work and meet up with other creatives and things like that. So pretty much, I'm at the moment, I'm back at home in my parents' home in Suffolk, and I'm working from here. So a bit of everywhere.
Oh yeah, that's incredible. Sounds amazing. And we've had our a live question just come in, and it's very relevant. So how did you get into your job?
Well, okay, so I I have always been interested in music and done a lot of performing arts when I was growing up. So I was in and around Felixstowe and Ipswich. I was part of Stage Door, Stagecoach, all that kind of thing. After I finished high school, I went and did the diploma in Suffolk College, which I remember now, it's such a long time ago, and in performing arts, which I adored. It was so good. And then I auditioned for lots of different performing arts schools, and I didn't get in anywhere that I wanted to get into. And I think this was mainly because I had absolutely no experience in dance, but music was my thing. So I took a year out. I still studied in that year, but I took a year out from that. And in the meantime, I tried to focus on, what I was really interested in doing. And I loved music. I was gigging at this time with my dad and on my own. I was like, I really want to do more contemporary music. I love performing arts, but that's more of like a hobby, and I'd love to get into more modern music and this side of the industry. And then I did some research and found some different universities. There's BIMM, which is in London. When I joined, it was called the Tech Music School, and now it's transferred over to BIMM. They've got one in Manchester, they've got one in Ireland, they've got one in Berlin. Popping up all over the place now. I auditioned to a couple of other places as well, got in everywhere, and chose to go to BIMM. So that was for creative musicianship. So I was singing and creating music, and it was great. I met so many people who I'm really, really close friends with now, and a lot of the people that I work with now as well, which is amazing. And then I went on to do my master's in music industry management and artist development. So my degree was very creative based, and I felt that I need to partner it with a bit more of the music business side of things. And so I did that, and through these different connections that I'd made when I was studying and just meeting people, connecting with people, and just making friends with people essentially, I then, for a friend of a friend, was told that Alex, who I work with now, was looking for somebody to do some PR. And I'd never really wanted to get into PR before. And I had a conversation with him, and he was like, "No, let's give it a go. Let's see how you go." And just ended up, it kind of just built from there onwards. And I was given a campaign to work on, and I was kind of shadowing someone else, and I learned on the job, literally kind of thrown in the deep end a little bit. But it offered everything that I was looking for in terms of working remotely, working in music, still getting to, have the best of both worlds. And it just built up from there.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, and thank you so much for kind of sharing the challenges as well within your journey. So like you said, you applied for some of the different performing arts schools and didn't get into them. And obviously that can be, for a young person going through that journey, that can be really hard to deal with that at the time. But it's just so nice that you shared that, and you shared actually how you overcome that and what you've done since. So that's amazing. Thank you. And some people may think that it's difficult to work in the music industry, or that there aren't maybe many roles within the industry. So parents might worry, "Oh, my child's interested in music, but actually, what else can they do other than, performing or being an artist?" So they might have a little bit of worry around that. So what would you say to challenge those misconceptions?
I get it. I mean, I had similar misconceptions when I was first kind of getting into music, and I kind of thought my only route would be singer-songwriter, and if I'm not famous, then that's it, kind of thing. And that's how you measure. A lot of people kind of initially measure success in the music industry. They kind of think, if you're not really embedded in it, you assume from outside looking in, oh, if they're not Ed Sheeran, or they're not this person, if they're not a well-known name, they're not successful. And that's so not the case. There are so many people working in the music industry that are often performers that you will have never heard of, yet they make completely sustainable income, and they're growing their career all the time. So I'd say there's so many opportunities. If you were looking at a performing side of things, you could absolutely be your own artist. Depending on the type of music you make, there are massive bands who are well known in like the folk, in the folk genre, in the heavy metal genre, in the underground indie sort of music scene. There is a place for you musically, and you'll find your fans, and people will come in and listen to you, and you can absolutely create a sustainable career that way. There's also session musicians. So if you're not kind of interested in making your own music, but you love playing music, you could work with other artists. And I've got some great friends who have been session musicians. They've gone on tour and done things, played incredible venues, like just playing other people's music. So, for example, at SG Lewis, Mura Massa, Georgia Smith, like all of these different people, and you won't know who they are, but they're playing these gigs. So there's session musicians that you could aspire to be if that's your thing. And there's also more on the music business side of things. You could look at doing what I do, which is a music PR. So essentially, when an artist is looking to release a song or an EP or an album, and they want to get it featured in different magazines or blogs or on YouTube channels with a big following or on some TikTok channels or, social media stuff, anything like that, I'm their go-to gal. And I'll kind of reach out to these people and message them and see if they'd like to support this single and just basically get as many people to shout about it as possible. And then there's also things like a radio plugger, which kind of does the same thing that I do, but with radio. So they are really close friends with a lot of the DJs and the producers on like BBC and all that kind of stuff. And they'll reach out to them and say, oh, will you play this track? Like, do you like it? All this kind of stuff. So there's radio plugging as well. But the list is endless. You could be a music manager if you're really good at organizing things and you love creating opportunities for people. You could be somebody's manager. There's gig promoters. You could book bands and create your own shows. So what I also do is organize eco music festivals. You could organize a festival. Like, the list and the possibilities really are endless, and there are so many opportunities out there. The music industry is such a huge place, and there's enough room for everyone to create a really sustainable, fulfilling, and a career that's full of longevity.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely challenge those misconceptions there. So thank you. That's amazing. And we've had another question come through. So how do you find and decide on which artists to work with? So obviously this would be in your PR role.
Cool. So what I love about what I do is that I'm fortunate enough to not have to work with an artist that I don't think aligns with the music that I enjoy, that I like to promote. So if an artist sends me a song and it's not quite something that I personally like, or I don't think maybe we fit very well, then I can pass it on to another one of my PR friends, because we've got lots of friends, which is lovely. So I can pass it on to them. But mainly, so LATCH has created quite a really good kind of reputation within our industry. And a lot of people just come through the Instagram. They message us and say, oh, I've got this release. I'd love to chat to you. And it's kind of done on a lot of word of basis. They kind of always say it in the music industry, but it's a recurring theme that a lot of it is about who you know. And mainly from LATCH, I would say that majority of the campaigns we work on have all come through previous campaigns we've worked with. Other artists have said, oh, you have to LATCH, like they're this, they've done this for me. And so we get them through like that. But yeah, so I guess in terms of actually choosing and finding them, I have done a little bit of artist outreach before, where I've basically just got on Instagram and looked at artists that I'm already following, that I already really like their music, and reached out to them and said, are you releasing at any time? Like, I'd love to work with you. And then if there's no one there, out of my friends, I'd reach out to my friends and say, do you know anyone who's releasing? Like, I'd like to do some more work, this kind of thing. Or yeah, just looking for Instagram and seeing similar artists of who I already follow and finding new music that way. It's often, there's lots of little kind of circles of people, and they often cross over at different points. So yeah, there's loads of resources to kind of find music. But I would say whatever aligns with me, whatever I listen to and think, yeah, this is a bit of me, then I'll reach out to them, or then I choose to work with them.
Awesome. Thank you. We're going to go into a bit more. So leaving your sort of like PR role, we're going to move more into your artist role of Forest. But before we do that, we just got another question come through. So you mentioned about your eco festivals. What makes a festival eco? Great question.
Yeah. So there are so many different things that can make a festival eco. For example, when I do eco festivals, we also raise money for a different environmental charity. So we've done money raising for WWF and for Extinction Rebellion previously. And that's through like ticket sales. So a percentage of the ticket sale will go towards that charity, and then usually the rest of the ticket sale goes on funding the artist's travel to the festival and those expenses. Other things such as the food you serve at the festival. So usually it's always plant-based or locally and sustainably sourced, or the type of cutlery and plates and things like that that we're using are recyclable or compostable. Gosh, there's lots of different things. In terms of decoration for the festival, all the stuff in hand or upcycled. Even a lot of the musicians that play at the festival have very strong environmental morals, and they support that within their music and how they travel down to the festivals. So a lot of them come by train and by coach, including the guests. There's so many different things. You can offset your travel by going onto a different website that has a carbon offset calculator. You can work out how much it's kind of cost the earth for you to get somewhere, and then you can offset that by paying the money. So there's a lot of different kind of opportunities on how to make a festival eco, and more are kind of coming to light and are easier to access like every day, really.
Yeah, and I think new kind of things are coming out as well to make it easier for people to be able to put on those eco festivals as well. So there's more options for those organising it as well, which is great. I want to move into speaking a bit more about Forest now. So as you mentioned, you put out your own music under Forest. So could you give some detail about into this work that you do and what your music is?
Yeah, absolutely. So alongside my PR bits and pieces, my first kind of initiation into the music industry was by singing and performing. And I started off by gigging around the local area and gigging with my dad, who also sings. And then it was throughout uni, we kind of were put this question. It was a task at university that we were put together to do, and it was to kind of create, all of the artist kind of tools that you would need to kind of start your artist journey. So, and that really started to make me think about who I was as an artist, what I wanted to be as an artist, like what was important to me, what made me stand out from other people, what was my kind of USP, my unique selling point at that time, and kind of try and combine all of those different things into one thing is what I wanted to do as I moved forward. So I knew the environment was super, super important to me, and it was at a stage, I'm trying to think how old I was now. I think it was a fair few years ago now, but it was at a time where it started to become a bit more common to actually start talking about the environment and those issues. And so I was like, this is really important to me. How do I combine music and my love for the planet and nature into one? And I kind of realized quite quickly that I loved performing, I loved creating, I loved writing music, but I didn't want to kind of go the kind of normal cookie cutter way of an artist. I didn't want the kind of fame that comes with a lot of artists. I didn't want to necessarily be touring all the time because that's not very good for the environment. And I thought it doesn't really align with what I want to do. So that kind of route into music was never really. I thought it was when I was young, when I was 11, I was like, I want to be famous, I want to perform on stage and all this kind of stuff. But as I got a bit older, I realized it didn't quite align with what I wanted to do. So I became Forest, and I decided that instead of going down this normal route, that I'd like to try and create kind of music for sync purposes. So for sync purposes is basically for like an advert or for a TV show or for a film, that kind of thing. They all need to license music to use in different video clips and things like that in media. And so I thought that perhaps this is something that I'd quite like to get into. And so I started writing with that in mind. And with the environment being such, a strong point of my focus, I tried to incorporate that in the types of music that I would make, and kind of going forward and getting involved with different sync agencies and creating a catalogue of music and kind of putting that to them and seeing what they liked, what they didn't like, what would fit, what wouldn't fit, and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of the route that I wanted to go down with music. I think, like as I was saying earlier, I can create such a sustainable career for myself this way. I don't need to be the next Ed Sheeran to enjoy music, to enjoy fulfillment out of music. Like this is much more me. And I think it's amazing. There's so many opportunities for people who aren't. There's no kind of strict from point A to point B. There's no strict route in the music industry. Like you can stop off over here and you can do this for a bit and you can enjoy this. Or if you fancy this, you can go and do a bit of that. And that's what I kind of love. And I really struggled with this when I was growing up, was having this one thing, or I want to be this and that's where I'm going to be. And I just think we're so complex as humans that we want different things at different stages of our lives. And you can absolutely have a sustainable and successful career by doing a bit of this, and then maybe by doing a little bit of that, and doing a little bit of this as well. And there's no kind of limit there. You don't have to be this person. You can do whatever you want to do, kind of thing.
Oh, there's some key nuggets in there. That's amazing. I love that. So I've got one last question for you, but before we go into that, just quickly, because I know that you have a song as well. You've released a song, which obviously was produced and written by yourself, and I think Dario was included within that as well. So where can those watching, if they want to, where can they go and listen to that, just to get a bit more of an understanding about the kind of the music that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, the type of music I do is more for kind of sync purposes. So this particular song in mind that I've just released is called Kingdom. So if any of you are fans of the Vikings program, or The Last Kingdom, or Lord of the Rings, which is me all over, it's kind of with that creativity scope in mind, and it was made for that kind of a series. And you can find it on Spotify, Forest, and it's called Kingdom.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It really is. So okay, yeah, just to round it up. So thank you so much for all the information that you've already provided about the sort of music industry. I think it's been really eye-opening for students to be able to know a bit about different roles they can do. But we know, as you've spoken about, forest is very closely linked to the natural world and the environmental issues. And this is something young people are really keen to get involved with as well. So if there was a young person who was interested in supporting the fight against the climate crisis and climate change, how could they do this? What would be maybe your advice or some tips for them, how they can do this?
Oh my gosh, so many ways.
Maybe pick like your top 3.
So I think one of the key things that I've noticed a lot with the younger generation, which they are incredible for, is that they're not afraid to ask questions, and they're not afraid to challenge kind of like the status quo. And I think that's really important to carry on doing. Like, don't be afraid to question adults, people who seem a bit more older and a bit wiser. You don't be afraid to ask them the question. So, if you are working for somebody, or you're at a restaurant, or you're at a music festival, ask organisers, ask people older than you, and say, what are your processes for what have you included in your business strategy? Like, ask them questions and say, what are you doing to actively help fight climate change? And I think these are questions that need to be asked, and I feel like they're already being asked, and people need to kind of be put on the spot a little bit and be like, oh, but we are doing this. I've never been asked that before. Or maybe they're not doing enough, and they're like, oh, well, if we're getting asked this by the younger generation, we need to start doing this. Like, I think there's so much power in the younger generation. I think they are beginning to realize it, but they should absolutely tap into that, because people will listen. And I think it's about like smaller things on like a small level, like shopping more in charity shops, secondhand stuff, vintage, eBay, that kind of thing. Asking your parents, if you're not in charge of like the groceries and things, like, oh, can we have maybe a meat-free meal tonight? Can we start introducing more veggie stuff? Can we start buying from the farm shop down the road instead of from the local supermarket? More sustainable foods, more seasonal stuff. That's when it's winter and autumn, like pumpkins and all that kind of stuff, and in the summer, other different things. And I would say, yeah, I'm not sure how many of you are on social media or will eventually be getting social media, but there's obviously a lot of information on there about the climate and stuff that you can share. And I think just incorporating it and having it in your mind and how you can kind of think about it and utilize it more in your kind of day to day, like taking a bike instead of getting a car, or walking to school with your friends instead of getting dropped off. These little things, simple little things you can incorporate, just make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And Keely, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about the music industry and sharing your journey as well. And, sharing that it's not always an easy, straightforward route, but actually there's lots of lessons and kind of growth within that along the way. And you kind of get to know yourself a little bit more for doing that. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me and for having me and for listening.
So again, thank you for Keely for coming on today and sharing all that information. And thank you to Josie for working behind the scenes, doing all the tech stuff today. And we look forward to seeing you back here on Thursday for another episode of Careers and Coffee. Thank you.